In this video, we're going to show you how to install the inner tie rod end on your Honda Ridgeline located on your steering rack. Using a 22mm socket, you got to loosen and remove your lug nuts. Once you have your lug nuts removed, go ahead and grab that wheel, remove it, and set it aside. Using our 19mm wrench, or you can use a pair of large pliers, you want to get and loosen the jam nut here, locking the outer tie rod end to the inner tie rod. Now sometimes you might have to use some heat on this here, depending if it's all rusted or not. And what we're going to do is back this down several threads. Using a 22mm socket, we want to go ahead and loosen and remove the nut on the tie rod end. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to use my 2.5 pound sledge and I'm going to strike the knuckle right here. Hopefully that will release our tie rod end. I'm also going to use a pry bar going from our sway bar up to the outer tie rod, and we're going to whack this to try and lift that up and out as it releases. And go ahead and release that. Now I want to go ahead and unthread our outer tie rod from the inner tie rod. Ours is a little bit rusty and frozen, so we're going to use a 22mm wrench right on the square side right here and a 17 on the inner tie rod here. I'm just trying to break this free. Now in our case, we can't get ours to really budge. I'm going to go ahead and heat this up a little bit to go ahead and get this to spin off of the shaft. Now we went ahead and heated this up, and we're going to go ahead and rotate our outer tie rod counterclockwise. We want to count the rotations it takes to unthread it from the inner tie rod. That way there, when you install the component, you can go ahead and spin that on the same amount of times and give you a base setting for your alignment. I'm going to use our 17mm and our 19mm socket and remove the jam nut. We have the bellows boot right here, and we have the clamp. We're simply going to use a pair of pliers. I'm going to pinch that clamp and slide that off. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tool here. It's a screwdriver, simple, but I actually put a notch in the middle here, and there's a purpose for this here. Now we're going to use this tool to go ahead and remove the inboard clamp. There's a metal band clamp on the inside here, and on that there's a little pinch point where the clamp is secured. Well, that's where this tool comes in handy. What actually locks into that, and then we'll tap that with the hammer, and we're going to literally just knock that clamp right off. Now the clamp is a one-time use. Here it is. And there's that little piece there that we put the screwdriver into to knock that off. Go ahead and discard that. With the clamp off, we can now grab that boot. We want to grab it and twist it and pull it down off of the inner tie rod. Now when we pull off the boot, you want to pay attention to where the rack unit itself goes into the rack housing. Now you want to check if any fluid comes out here. That means that the rack seal is bad and you're going to have to service or replace that steering rack. Ours is clean. We're just going to wipe it out a little bit from the factory grease, and then we're going to go ahead and remove our inner tie rod. Now, in order to remove our inner tie rod, we're going to use our tool here. Okay, once that inner tie rod is broken free, we should be able to go ahead and loosen this. Now you want to pay attention, this does have a locking collar on it. Now on the factory unit here, there is a plastic or nylon collar here. If yours has it, just keep it in place there. I'm going to take the supplied locking collar here, and there's tabs on that. These tabs on this collar, or this locking tab here, or shim, need to engage into the rack notches themselves. So go ahead and line that up. Then you can take your inner tie rod, line that up, and you want to thread this on. I'm going to use our tool to tighten this. So I'm going to reinstall this. I'm going to go ahead and torque this down to 32 foot-pounds. With that torqued, let's go ahead and remove our inner tie rod tool. Now on our shim back here, I'm going to use my hammer and I'm going to gently tap this little ear right here to lock this in. There's one on the other side. If you have the ability to do so, you want to go ahead and tap that one as well. Doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to roll those edges just a little bit to help lock that in place. Now right here, we have the pivot point for our inner tie rod. We're going to use the factory supplied grease here. I'm going to smear that on there and basically work this into the pivot point. I'm going to use the entire package of grease on that. Install your bellows boot. Want to make sure that this portion of the boot itself slips over the ridge on the steering rack housing itself. What you may want to do, it might be beneficial to go ahead and turn the steering wheel to the right. That'll pull this portion of the inner tie rod further in. It'll make it easier to install the boot. Now I'm going to go on the passenger side and I'm going to go ahead and rotate that wheel. That's going to pull the inner tie rod inward. And by rotating this wheel over here, it's going to pull that rack in. All right, now we can go ahead and pop that boot onto the rack. Feel around the edge, make sure it's fully seated, and it is. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to take the supplied tie strap here and we're going to start it. And we're going to slide this over the boot and we're going to install the band onto the inner portion of the boot, right where the old metal band used to be. So basically replacing the metal band for this tie strap. Now that we have it in place, I'm going to use a pair of pliers to go ahead and make sure that it's good and tight. And then we'll just snip off the excess. There we go. Use a pair of cutters. Snip off the excess. With that secured, I'm going to go back to the other side. I'm going to crank that wheel back so we can go ahead and extend that inner tie rod back out. On the outer portion here, we're going to use a other supplied tie strap. And we're going to repeat that process here. Make sure it's snug. Go ahead and cut off the excess. I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize compound on the threads here. Thread on our jam nut. Now when we removed the tie rod, it took us roughly 20 full revolutions to remove that from the inner tie rod. So we're going to thread that back on 20 revolutions. Now this is going to give us a preliminary setting for our alignment. You will have to have an alignment performed after this job is done to make sure that you prevent premature tire wear or component wear. All right, it just caught one. Now if you can't get your tie rod end here to bend out a little bit to fit in here straight, you can go ahead and pop the nut back on. So what we're going to do is thread that nut on and use a socket here. Just kind of pull that a little bit. Let's go ahead and rotate that just a little bit so we can get that to line up better. Go ahead and thread on that tie rod nut. Let's go ahead and snug that down. Now the one thing you do want to pay attention to, this is a castle nut, so it has notches in it. Now there's a reason for this here. The ball joint stud itself has a hole in it for a cotter pin. So that means that you're going to have to line up one of these notches with the hole. So identify where the hole is on the stud, get this started, and then when we tighten and torque this down, you need to pay attention to where that hole is so we can go ahead and put that cotter pin through. I'm going to torque this down to 41 foot-pounds. Now once that's torqued, you want to line up the notch with the hole. And if it's not lining up, if you can't put the cotter pin through, you want to continue to tighten this until the next notch lines up with the hole. Never back this nut off to line up that cotter pin. And ours is just barely clearing, so we're going to tighten that just a tiny bit more. There it is, it's going through. Use a pair of pliers. And grab one of the legs of that cotter pin, bring that back and through. Tap that up and use our cutters to cut off the back leg there. Go ahead and discard that. Now you want to go ahead and tighten down your jam nut. Now if you have the ability to do so, you want to go ahead and torque this to 33 foot-pounds. If not, just make sure it's good and snug. So you can see that the tie rod is spinning. Tighten that. Now what we're going to do is you want to go ahead and level off the tie rod here. I'm simply going to grab a pair of pliers and grab this and rotate this down so that it's level. Now at this point here, we're all installed. We can now install our left front wheel. You want to repeat this process for the other side. Don't forget, get an alignment performed once this job is done. Go ahead and grab your wheel, line that up. We'll install our lug nuts. Once we have all of these started, we'll go ahead and snug those down. Let's now go ahead and torque down our lug nuts to 94 foot-pounds. When doing this, you want to do it in a crisscross or star pattern. You're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.